In the next 18 months, the UK economy will experience three simultaneous financial shocks that haven't occurred together since 1976. And unlike the 1970s, we don't have North Sea oil discoveries to save us this time. Most mainstream economists are predicting a soft landing, maybe a mild recession at worst. I'm going to show you exactly why they're catastrophically wrong, and more importantly, why the next 18 months will determine whether you protect your wealth or watch it evaporate along with millions of other Brits who didn't see this coming. By the end of this video, you'll understand the 5 economic indicators that are all flashing red simultaneously, you'll see the precise timeline of how this unfolds, and you'll know the 3 specific actions you need to take in the next 30 days to protect yourself. Because here's the brutal truth. By the time the Bank of England admits we're in a genuine crisis, by the time the mainstream media starts covering this property, your savings will have already lost 30 to 40% of their purchasing power. The window to prepare isn't next year, it's right now. Make sure you're subscribed to UK Financial Truth, because what I'm about to reveal isn't speculation or doom-mongering. It's a systematic breakdown of 5 interconnected economic failures that are all converging at exactly the same time. And if you understand what's coming, you can position yourself to not just survive it, but potentially profit from it while everyone else is caught off guard. Let me start with something that happened 2 weeks ago that should have dominated every news broadcast, but was buried on page 12. The UK government's debt servicing costs have now exceeded £100 billion per year. That's more than we spend on defence, more than we spend on police and courts combined, more than we spend on transport infrastructure. We're now spending over £100 billion annually just to pay the interest on money we've already borrowed, not paying down the debt itself, just the interest. To put this in perspective, in 2010, debt interest payments were around £30 billion. In 15 years, that cost has more than tripled, and interest rates are still elevated. Every time the Bank of England holds rates at 4.75%, that's another several billion added to the annual debt servicing bill. This isn't sustainable. It's mathematically impossible to maintain this trajectory. When debt servicing costs grow faster than the economy itself, you enter what economists call a debt spiral. And the UK entered that spiral 18 months ago. We just haven't admitted it yet. This brings me to the 5 indicators. These aren't abstract economic concepts. These are concrete, measurable factors that have historically preceded every major economic collapse in modern history. And all 5 are flashing red in the UK right now, simultaneously. That's what makes this situation so dangerous. Indicator 1. Debt servicing costs as a percentage of government revenue. I just mentioned we're spending over £100 billion on debt interest, but here's the crucial metric. That represents approximately 10% of total government revenue. When debt servicing exceeds 10% of revenue, historical patterns show governments face a choice: either implement severe austerity or allow inflation to erode the real value of the debt, or default. There are no other options. The UK government is currently trying to avoid all 3, which means they're doing nothing effective. They're hoping for growth that isn't materializing. This is the same mistake Greece made in 2009. They assumed growth would solve their debt problem. It didn't. By the time they admitted the severity of the crisis, they needed an EU bailout to avoid complete economic collapse. The UK won't get a bailout. We're not in the euro. We don't have that safety net. When our debt crisis hits, we face it alone. And the markets know this. UK government bond yields, the interest rate investors demand to lend money to Britain, have been rising steadily. International investors are looking at UK debt and saying we need higher returns to compensate for the increased risk. That's a warning sign that cannot be ignored. Indicator 2. Currency devaluation accelerating. The pound has lost 30% of its value against the dollar since 2008. But what's more concerning is the acceleration. In the past 2 years, we've seen sharper declines than in the previous decade. The pound briefly touched 1.03 against the dollar in 2022, the lowest in history. It's recovered somewhat, but the trend is clear. The currency is weakening, and it's weakening faster. Why does this matter? Because Britain is a massive net importer. We import more goods than we export. We import energy, food, manufactured goods, raw materials. When the pound falls, all of those imports become more expensive. That feeds directly into inflation. You see it at the supermarket, you see it in your energy bills, you see it in the price of electronics, clothing, vehicles, everything. A weak currency can be good for exporters. If you're selling British goods abroad, a weak pound makes your products cheaper and more competitive internationally. But the UK doesn't manufacture enough to benefit from this. Our export base has been declining for decades. We've shifted to a service economy, particularly financial services, and financial services don't benefit from currency weakness the same way manufacturing does. What you get is the worst of both worlds, rising import costs without the offsetting benefit of increased export competitiveness. That's a recipe for stagflation, rising prices with stagnant growth, and we're seeing the early stages of exactly that right now. Indicator 3. Capital flight. This is the one that doesn't get discussed enough in mainstream media, but it's potentially the most dangerous. Capital flight means money leaving the country, foreign investors pulling out, wealthy individuals moving assets offshore, businesses relocating headquarters to more favorable jurisdictions, and it's accelerating. Foreign direct investment into the UK has declined 30% since 2016. Companies that were planning to build factories in Britain are choosing Poland or Germany instead. Tech firms that were considering London are opting for Berlin or Amsterdam. The capital that should be flowing into the UK to modernize infrastructure, build businesses and create jobs is going elsewhere. But it's not just foreign capital. British wealth is leaving too. High net worth individuals are establishing residency in Dubai, Monaco, Switzerland, Portugal. They're moving assets into offshore trusts and foreign property. The smart money, the people with resources and advisors and global mobility, they're diversifying themselves away from the UK. When you see that pattern, you should pay attention. These people have information, resources, and motivation to protect their wealth. If they're moving assets out, there's usually a good reason. And here's what makes capital flight so dangerous. It's self-reinforcing. When capital leaves, that reduces investment, which weakens the economy, which causes more capital to leave. It's a doom loop, and once it starts, it's very difficult to reverse without severe policy interventions that the UK government shows no willingness to implement. Indicator 4. Productivity collapse. This is the structural problem underlying everything else. Productivity means output per worker. How much value does a British worker generate per hour compared to workers in other countries? And the answer is significantly less than we used to, and significantly less than our competitors. UK productivity growth has been essentially flat since 2008, 17 years of near-zero productivity improvement. Meanwhile, the US, Germany, France, even some Asian economies have continued improving productivity. The gap is now approximately 20%. A German worker produces in 4 days what a British worker takes 5 days to produce. That's a massive competitive disadvantage. Why has UK productivity stalled? Multiple factors: underinvestment in technology and equipment, inadequate skills training, weak management practices, poor infrastructure that make logistics inefficient, regional inequality that leaves talent underutilized. It's a complex problem with no easy solutions, but here's the key point. Without productivity growth, you cannot have sustained economic growth. Everything else, wages, living standards, tax revenue, debt repayment capacity, it all depends on productivity. And we've had zero productivity growth for 17 years. That's not a recession. That's not a cyclical downturn. That's structural stagnation. And structural problems require structural solutions, the kind of comprehensive reforms that are politically difficult and take years to implement. The UK government isn't even seriously attempting this. We're trying to paper over a structural crisis with short-term monetary and fiscal tweaks. It won't work. Indicator 5. Consumer debt at record levels. British households are carrying more debt than at any point in history. Credit card debt has hit record highs. Personal loans, car finance agreements, buy now, pay later schemes, it's everywhere. The average British household is carrying approximately £65,000 in total debt, including mortgages. For many families, that's more than their annual income. Why does this matter? Because consumer debt is fine when times are good. When you've got job security and wages are rising, debt is manageable. But when a recession hits, when employment rises, when wages stagnate or fall, consumer debt becomes a catastrophe. People can't make payments. Defaults cascade through the financial system. Banks take losses. They reduce lending. Businesses can't get credit. More layoffs follow. The recession deepens. This is exactly